everybody. I'm getting this stream started for today. If you are here, please type your name in the chat. Try to adjust my screen here so that I can see the chat and still see what I'm showing you. All right. So if you're here, type your name into the chat. What I have up here on my drawing board for today is an example of the four object drawing. Hello, Shushma Ellis. And hey everybody. All right, I'm glad to see people are rolling in. For some reason I'm having a hard time adjusting my screen so I can see everything. That's better. Okay, let me see. There, that's better. All right, so I want to start off by saying something funny from last class period. Before we were closing out, I said it doesn't matter who you vote for, just vote. And then I realized how funny that was. I didn't really mean to say that. It absolutely matters who you vote for. But what I was trying to do was say, I was trying to say, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm just telling you to vote, right? Okay? So I didn't mean to say that voting doesn't matter and you should do it. You should do it because it does matter. It matters so much. But I'm just trying to remain neutral. All I'm telling you is that when it's time for you to cast a vote, you absolutely need to cast a vote. And that's all I'll say about that. But I wanted to clarify because I realized right after I said it how bad it sounded. Okay, so that was last stream. Another issue I'd like to address is that last week I was late. I think I was late on getting up that second, the announcement, kind of telling you what to do, telling you about this drawing. We talked about you doing a drawing of 3 or 4 objects on Thursday of last stream. So I hope you've had a chance to do that and add it to the Module 1 critique thread. It's my fault for not getting it out there earlier, so I'm not going to worry about it if you're not done with it yet. But go ahead and get it there as soon as you can, just so that we can complete Module 1 and move on to Module 2. I had a hard week last week because my daughter was with me 24/7, and she's 6 years old, so it makes it a little hard for me to concentrate and do what I'm supposed to do. Anyway, this is an example here of where we wanted to end up, wrap up Module 1, and that was doing the drawing of objects together, 3 objects, 4 objects, so that you can practice your sighting and measuring. On this one, this is the one, I believe I did this for the video. We have, I had a pepper grinder, basically just a cylinder and a coffee pot. And really this is just this isn't, to do full value or anything. This is just a line drawing to practice your sighting and measuring, to practice seeing proportion, and just really, it's just practice, okay? So once we move on from this module, the module that we're in now is, that I've posted, is Module 2, and that's value. So we're gonna leave this line drawing alone for a little while, and now we're gonna learn about value, which is lightness and darkness. And that was posted in the announcements today. I thought I had done it yesterday, but I forgot to uncheck one box to make it visible. So it's now visible. In the announcements, your instructions for the value module are now visible. So before I move on from Module 1, do we have any Module 1 questions? Any questions about sighting and measuring? Anything? Just let me know. And I will say, don't forget the sighting and measuring. As we're in Module 2, we're going to be focusing on value, but if you have struggled with sighting and measuring, you might still want to practice it on your own. If you're a little bit iffy on it, rewatch those videos. I find for me, when I'm watching video instruction, when something is difficult, I watch it several times. I watch it a lot so that it can kind of sink in a little bit better each time I see it. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of that. So the next thing I wanted to say is ellipses. This is just a page example of ellipse and cylinder practice. When you practice, I've got my, what do you call this? This is the vine charcoal. And when you practice your ellipses, just get a big page. Don't ever practice your ellipses like this. You know, you want to hold it a nice overhand grip and practice this kind of motion to, this is a little bit high up here, but you want to practice just moving your whole arm. I usually keep my wrist still, my fingers still, and I draw the ellipse just with my whole arm. Okay, so that's how you want to do it. And then you can just turn them into cylinders if you want practice doing that. So this is just really good warm-up. You know, it's like if you're going to go jogging or something, or whatever it is you might do for exercise. To loosen up and warm up, you might do some stretches. This is kind of that same idea. It's this kind of holding of this pencil is really going to loosen you up, and it's just going to make it more accurate. And once you're loosened up, drawing is so much more fun. Once you can think about these whole arm movements, and the fact that, you know, is everybody familiar with that kind of anticipation when you start drawing something and you're like, oh my god, you're holding your pencil like this and you're like, it's not going to be straight, and you're drawing and it turns out, you know, something like that. Well, if you just kind of loosen up and say, okay, well, the first thing that comes off of my pencil, it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not because I'm ghosting it. I'm using that ghosting technique, and I'm not committed to the very first line I draw. That whole idea just loosens you up. The idea that, let's see, I did circles on this side, but just the whole idea that the first thing you draw, you're not committed to. You can just ghost it like this, get your arm going, and then you can kind of start to see little traces. And then as you go, you can just kind of try to even it out. And then, because it's kind of a ghosty image, the object or the shape appears as you add lines to it that become more and more accurate. So if you haven't practiced that ghosting method yet, practice it. It's really frees you up. Okay, so that's that. This is just this is ellipse practice. Ellipses come back. They're in everything. Cylinders are in everything. So practice that. All right, and I had this here as just this is something I did in class a few semesters ago. And this is just a still life setup that we had, where, you know, you start with your vine charcoal, you get your proportions just right, and then when your proportions are right, then you can then take your charcoal pencil and make your lines more permanent. So I had a student asking me about this vine charcoal. Um, so the vine charcoal is something that is I use for what I like to call an underdrawing, which means just getting the drawing right. I consider this like a dry erase marker. It does leave a ghost, when you erase it like this. But it's very easily changed. It helps me feel like I'm not making any mistakes. I mean, that I'm just free to correct any mistakes. So I use this at the beginning of every drawing just to get my proportions right, to make adjustments, to make corrections. And then when I look at it, I might even, when I finish something that's an underdrawing like this, just a line drawing, I usually put my drawing on one side of the room and then I walk back to the other side of the room. You'll be surprised how many mistakes you can find when you're looking at your drawing from across the room. I think it's kind of the same if you take a cell phone picture of it and then look at it, because it then becomes very small, and certain errors or things that aren't right can stand out when you look at your drawing from a distance. So again, anytime I'm doing a line drawing, I use this. I get my proportions right. When they're right, I'll then go back with this charcoal pencil, which is harder to erase, and I'll kind of make it more permanent. And so that's kind of where we are right at the end of Module 1. We're doing drawings just like that, and then we're leaving them. So what we're about to do now in Module 2 is we're going to start talking about value, which is lightness and darkness. So each of these grapes, once I apply value to it, instead of looking like circles, they'll look like spheres. And the way we do that is through value. So again, we talk a lot about illusion in this class. Artists create illusion. That's what we do. And so how do we do that? Well, one of the ways we do that is through value. We look at the way light falls across an object, and we try to replicate that light pattern on a two-dimensional surface. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. All my videos in the and PowerPoints and stuff in the Module 2 folder are about how to A, see value, and B, how to create it. One of the things that people often don't talk about in drawing is that a lot of learning how to draw is up here. It's in your mind. It's also in your vision. It's learning how to actually see something, how to see subtle changes in value, and then to put that on paper. A good example would be if you're looking at me right now while I'm talking. This side of my face is really bright. That's because the window is over here, and the light from the window is coming in and it's hitting this side of my face. It's super bright. But if you look at the other side of my face, it's really dark. Those are two very contrasting values. We have a super light value on this side of my face. It's like as bright as that door jamb right there, which is painted white. Then we have, on this side of my face, is very dark. And then my shirt would be, the other end of the value range. So we have like the door jamb over here is white, bright white. My shirt is as dark as you can get. It's black. And then the other values that you're seeing are somewhere in between. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about creating an illusion. When you have to start to see and recognize all the different changes in value on an object, and you have to learn to translate that into two dimensions. So what the hope is, our main goal is to create some really nice portfolio pieces in Module 3, which is still life. So Module 3 combines learning how to do these exact proportions, and learning your sighting and measuring, learning how to make your vision more accurate proportionally, looking at negative spaces, That's module 1. Module 2 is creating that illusion of the light falling across objects. And when you combine those two things, you're ready for still life, right? Because then you can draw something accurately, and then you can also create that illusion of it being three-dimensional. All right, so let's talk about some of our basic shapes. We have a sphere and cylinder we will talk about first. And this is just something that was done quickly in class. What I talk about in that first, I hope some of you have watched it, but it's okay if you haven't. My PowerPoint presentation for this module, I did not have the announcement up Monday, and I thought I did. So if you haven't watched it, no worries, watch it after this. But what I talk about in that first PowerPoint presentation is I talk about what's called the classic order of light. And that is for a sphere. The classic order of light for a sphere is a very specific pattern that happens when you light a sphere from the upper left or the upper right. What you get is you get a highlight area here, and that's the highlight represents where the light hits the sphere. Where the light hits the sphere directly, in this case indicated by the arrow, where it hits it directly, you're going to see a highlight, and that's your lightest value on that sphere. It's going to be your highlight. And then it goes into this area here, which is your light, right? So that's highlight, light. And then your light is going to get progressively darker as it goes around the object. So let's think about that. Why does that happen? A sphere is around a spherical object, right? So what's happening is the light is striking it here, and the rest of the object is then curving away from the light source gradually, right? The darkest part of your sphere is going to be down here. This cast shadow down here, where the sphere is sitting on this surface, this table, and there's no light under here. There's no light under here at all. So that cast shadow is going to be your darkest value. So here we have the light, and then, as I said, the highlight. Then the light, which is basically representative of the light source hitting your sphere, and then as the sphere curves away from the light source, it gradually gets a little darker until you get to this crescent shape. This crescent moon shape here is your core shadow. And the core shadow on this, I think, could be darker. A lot of these drawings I have been sitting in a stack, and they get kind of smeared over time. But this area here is, without this core shadow, this would still look like a circle. Okay, so when we're drawing a sphere, our object is to make a circle. Basically, if you start with a circle, is to make a circle into a three-dimensional spherical object. And without that core shadow being fairly dark, it's just not going to enter into that three-dimensional realm. And like I said, this one has been rubbed a lot, so I could make this area here a little bit darker. So this core shadow, and I'm using this vine charcoal right now, but let me tell you something about it, and I think I talk about this on the video. The vine charcoal is easy to erase, so we're not going to use it for super dark areas in general, because it will end up being erased. We really want to use our charcoal pencils for that. All right, so blending is a big part of getting this right, and it's one of the hardest parts. So blending is where you get rid of a harsh line. So if I say this is my core shadow, and I draw this here, I've got to get rid of that harsh line, because it flattens out the object. It ruins my illusion, basically. Just especially on a sphere, the ability to take to blend in different values kind of seamlessly. That's the key to getting these things to look realistic. So you want to be able to blend away harsh lines between values, and that's going to be key. What are we using for blending? So in class, in school, most of us use paper towels, but there are other things that we use, and these were on your supply list. This is called a blending stump. There's a fancy French name for it also, and I forget what that is. But it's basically just rolled up paper that has a tip. And blending stumps are useful to blending out harsh lines. Okay? So I think I'm kind of all over the place right now. I realize I haven't finished talking about the classic order of light. So just know that for this, you will need your charcoal pencils. You will need your vine charcoal to kind of get things started. I like to start with an all-over medium value on my paper, and I'm going to show you that next. Okay, this one was not done that way. You can also you need something for blending. You need either a blending stump or a paper towel, or there we go, tortillons. How do you say it? Oh, I wish I could hear your voice. I think it's tortillons, something like that. Paper towel, blending stump, tortillon, if you please, or chamois cloth. And we call it chamois. It's actually also French, chamois. Or for those of you who watch bad TV, ShamWow, right? You remember that guy who was selling the ShamWow cloths? Anyway, the chamois cloth is a little bit different. A chamois cloth can almost double as an eraser. It takes away a lot of the value. So if you have a chamois cloth, it's fun to experiment with how different it is. Okay, so we'll talk about blending in a minute. Let me go back. Let me try to keep myself focused on the classic order of light. Highlight, light. Then we have core shadow. And then notice here, at the edge of the sphere, this is called reflected light. And that is really key also in really getting the sphere to pop up off of the paper. Because what happens is this little area of reflected light kind of serves to separate the back of the sphere from this cast shadow. And if it's not there, your sphere can kind of disappear into the shadow because the values end up being the same, right? So if you've looked at your drawing lingo sheet, one of the things that we like to talk about is contrast. So if I were in class, I'd say, can anyone tell me what contrast is? But if anyone wants to type it in, you can. Contrast. That's when two things are right next to each other are of a different state. So if you have something really light next to something really dark, that's high contrast. If you have two things next to each other that are the same value, then they're not going to be separate from each other at all. They're going to blend together. That's no contrast. If you have something that's a value number of, let's say, a middle value of 5 on a value scale from 1 to 10, if you have that next to something that's a 4, there's going to be a very soft line in between those two things because they're very close in value. They're very close to being the same. So the more that you vary the values when two things are touching each other, the more contrast you have. So that's kind of the theory behind the reason why you need this reflected light here. So reflected light. Cast shadow down here. It's really dark. There's no light getting down here because the sphere is blocking the light. And then as the light is allowed to come past the object in the cast shadow, this dark area then feathers out, or it starts to blend in, and this gets a little bit lighter. All right, so I'm going to keep moving, and then I'm going to show you the next drawing. This is a cylinder. So a cylinder consists of our ellipse, right? That we got to keep practicing and keep practicing and keep practicing. And the light source here is also coming from the upper left. This is our highlight here where the light strikes the cylinder. And then as the cylinder curves away from the light, it goes into shadow. And then a lot of times we'll have some reflected light back here. If the light source is coming from either up anywhere up here, this surface is going to be lighter, right? Because it's going to catch the light. It's also a flat surface, right? So if we were doing our drawing with lines, we know this is flat. So just depending on where your light source is, there may be some sort of a gradation of light depending on your light source. You may want to, at home, get some cylindrical objects and light it from the upper left. Get into a dark room. Take, let's say, for example, a soup can or an oatmeal box or whatever you have that's a cylinder, and take your phone camera light, or if you have, I forgot to bring it up here, if you have a clip light of any sort, notice how these light patterns change on your objects as you move your light around. Same thing with the sphere. If you have something spherical at home, a ball, that would be the most obvious thing. Anything that's spherical shaped, get a light source and get into a dark room with a single light source and just move your light source around. See what happens to the cast shadow. The cast shadow will change dramatically. See what happens to your highlight. Where is your highlight on your object as you move that light around? So that's another thing you can do at home. So here we go again. Highlight. We have the light as it curves away from the light source. It's going to go into darkness, and then we'll usually have some kind of reflected light. That reflected light is going to change based on your light source. But in general, for a sphere, for a cylinder, if you're drawing something cylindrical, all you really need to know is that the light's got to be hitting it somewhere, and where that light is hitting it, you really need to show that. And because even if you're drawing something really small like a rope, and rope has all this other stuff going on in it, but you're going to have that beam of light going through the center of it for it to look dimensional. All right, so I'm going to show you the way I would like you to do your drawings. The way I think it works the best is to start with your vine charcoal and just start with this shade of gray. So you take your vine charcoal and you coat your entire paper. And this is the drawing paper. Try not to use, I don't know if you all bought newsprint or not. Don't use newsprint for that. You want to use drawing paper for this. Take your charcoal, your vine charcoal, and just coat the whole paper. Then take a paper towel, or probably wouldn't use a chamois cloth for it, but take your paper towel and just rub the whole thing in. I'll demonstrate this in a minute. And then that's where you start. You're starting with your whole paper being about a number 4 or 5 on the value scale, or maybe a 3. It doesn't really matter, but you're going to start off with that medium value. Then you're going to draw your circle. You're going to use your nice overhand grip, and keep your wrist from moving, and just going to use that whole arm until you get a circle that looks right. Don't start doing value on something that's lopsided. I see it all the time in class. I'm like, wait a minute, don't start the value yet. Your circle is lopsided. Get that circle right first. And you're not committed to the first line you make. You're not committed to the first 12 lines you make. You're only, committed once you start putting in that value, and also you're committed once you start putting this on there to make it dark. So one of the things I'm seeing that's wrong with this drawing, and that I want to caution you about ahead of time, is this dark line up here. We want to be careful with outlining things in dark charcoal for the value module and for the still life, because we're used to kind of doing that, because it creates some kind of a pop. We like that. But what happens when you're drawing in full value, if you heavily outline something with a dark outline, it will just flatten it out. So on this drawing, this is a little too dark up here. It can be dark down here because it's in the shadows. But up here where it's light, you're going to have to make sure that you don't have a heavy dark outline. So again, we have the highlight, the light, the core shadow, and the reflected light. Then we have the cast shadow down here, which that line can be pretty dark right there where the cast shadow is, because there's no light getting down there. Remember, again, this is all about what I had said about contrast. The problem with having this dark line here, it's a little bit too much contrast, that line from the object. All right, so you want to try to avoid that. And then we have just the cast shadow that comes out. This is cylinder. We have the light, the highlight, the light. We have a little bit of reflected light over here, and the top is light because it's catching the direction of the light, which is this way. Okay, and this is the direction of the light here. Okay, so this is an example of what you'll be drawing. You need to draw the classic order of light sphere, the cylinder, and the cube. I think I may have forgot to bring an example of the cube. I'll show you that Thursday. I always start out with the sphere because it's the most complex, and it can be the most frustrating because there's so many different things to remember. You have highlight, light, core shadow, reflected light, and cast shadow. Core shadow, that is. Okay, and cast shadow. All right, so let me just get back to something that I was talking about before. So this was an example, sort of a demo that I did, one still life module, where we had these a basket. Basket weave can be very intimidating to draw. But what I wanted to point out is that a basket is constructed, or at least the basket we were using, I think it's over there, I'm not going to get up and get it though, but is constructed by these cylindrical ribs, for lack of a better term of what to call them. It's just wicker, and it's like a long cylinder, right? And then the way that the basket is constructed, you have these cylindrical forms that are really support the basket. Then you have these flat rattan or whatever it is that goes over the cylinder, and then it goes under the cylinder, and then it goes over the cylinder. So my point is that this is a cylinder. This is how you shade it, right? And I've done that here. No matter how small of a little cylinder you have to recognize that that's what it is, and you really want to get that highlight in there. So that's why this drawing looks dimensional, because I have these cylindrical forms are classically lit like a cylinder. Also, where these flat forms, where it goes over the cylinder, I don't know if you can see it, but when I'm going to go back to what we learned in cross contour. When there's a change in plane, there's a change in what? Line direction. There's also, when there's a change in plane, there's also a change in value, right? So you'll start to see that as well. But here, when I drew this, when this hits the cylinder, it goes over the cylinder, so it gets a little bit of the curve of the cylinder. Then it flattens out again, and then when it comes over the cylinder, it gets a curve, right? So there's that. But also, when it goes over the top of this cylinder, it's also getting this same highlight right here. So do you see how the highlight is here? And then as it comes down, it gets in shadow a little bit. And then when it goes under the next cylindrical form, right, it's like that. It's like this shadow over here. It's like the cast shadow. It's not getting any light, so there I have to put darkness here, and darkness on this other side. But then the light's able to hit it again out here. And then when it goes over your cylindrical shape, it's going to pick up that highlight. So that's how you draw something like this. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've got these cylinders, then I've got this thing, it goes over, then it goes under, then it goes over, then it goes under, then it goes over, then it goes under. So the next question you ask yourself is, what does the light do when it goes over? What does the light do when it goes under? And how can I, and that creates this pattern. So again, remember, when there's a change in plane, there's a change in value also. Because, why is that? Because of the light source. Wherever the light source is, it's going to pick up the things that are closest, that it's hitting directly, and the things that are being shaded from the light value are going to be darker. Case in point, oh, see, it's backwards. My face. This is from the window, super bright. This side, super dark, because the rest of my face is blocking the light source on this side. The light is not reaching over here. All right, so again, this is us being illusionists, right? We want to be able to take value and make a line drawing look dimensional. Like this was a circle before I added value. Now it's a sphere. All right. So this week we want to focus on getting these basic shapes. Practice your basic shapes. So what I'm having you do is I'm having you draw two, let me just bring them back. Two large shapes. This size. This is my 18 by 24 paper. And see how I drew a line down the middle, and I want a large sphere on one side and a large cylinder on the other side. Believe it or not, sometimes drawing larger can be a little bit easier. it's a little bit more work with the shading and stuff. But this is what I want you to do this week. I want you to create your cylinder and sphere. And then in your sketchbooks, we're going to use charcoal for this on your paper, because we're mostly using charcoal in this course. But in your sketchbooks are quite a bit smaller, and charcoal can be quite messy in a sketchbook. So in your sketchbook, you can practice this with graphite, which is a pencil, just any kind of pencil. Pencils blend really nicely with like a tissue. You can use toilet tissue, you can use facial tissue, or you can use your blending stump. So again, we're going to do large shapes, large basic shapes, and then we're going to do small basic shapes for practice in your sketchbook. The smaller drawings take us a smaller amount of time. Think about this as your, I like to make I forgot the word I'm looking for. I like to compare this to making music. These basic shapes, these are like your scales. You've got to know how to do these basic shapes correctly with the lighting. If you can't get these correctly with the lighting, you're not going to do well in still life. So really take this time to practice this. So here's an example of what happens when you practice it. I mean, this is a fake pumpkin that we have in the classroom. It's made out of styrofoam. But these are basically cylinders, right? Because if you think about it, it's like a cylinder cut in half, a pumpkin is, because it's got these things, ridges that are cylindrical. All right, it's not the full cylinder, it's half of it. So if you wanted to kind of imagine, like, let's say you were going to make a pumpkin out of a solid clay, you might start with a solid sphere, and then you might make a bunch of cylindrical forms and wrap them around. That's kind of how this pumpkin is. And so what we're doing when we're drawing this pumpkin, let me test your knowledge. Take a look at this drawing and tell me, where is the light source coming from? Somebody type it in. Where's the light source coming from on this pumpkin? Do you see highlights? Do you see a cast shadow? Anybody? Okay, it's coming from the upper right. It might be reversed for you, I don't know, but yeah, that's right, Rob, the right side. So yeah, it's coming from the right. You can, okay, there's a, there's a lag, I see now where everybody said it. Yeah, it's coming from the right. We know this because the light is striking the pumpkin right here. Those are the highlights, which mean the light is coming from this direction. We also see the cast shadow over here, and the cast shadow is where the pumpkin itself is blocking the light source. Okay, so it's behind it this way. So this was drawn from observation. So we had our highlights here, we had some reflected light in here, but basically these things are derived from cylinders, from that classic order of light on a cylinder. That's what it was derived from. Also the stem, let's look at the stem. You can see where the stem turns away from the light right here. See how on this side it's dark, on this side it's catching the light. And then on this side that's catching the light, there are these kinds of things, but they're very small. And those are also modeled after a cylinder. Okay, and when you get to be doing something that's that small, that's when this comes in handy. This is that Tombow Mono Zero eraser pen. you can get in with this eraser and create nice little highlights with that. All right, so this is an example of a value object. We're going to be doing a value object once we get the cylinder and the sphere and the cube done. We're going to be doing an object in full value. In class we do this pumpkin. Last semester we did an egg drawing where, if you can see over my shoulder on this side, that is a sheet that I have draped on the wall with, and I have it put in with some text, just a white sheet. But that's what the backdrop was for this egg drawing. And I think this is the first one I did. I got it to a certain point, and then, well, you can see these. I had 3 eggs, and they were lit from the upper left. So you have your highlight, you have your light, you have your core shadow, you have your reflected light, and then you have your cast shadows here. This is all, I think this is all vine charcoal, so some of it has erased. But here, and the sheet had these crazy wrinkles in it, and I got kind of caught up in trying to replicate that up here. But here's an example of those eggs again, and the sheet. And so this is also a value drawing. And just take note of contrast. Take note that the sheet, when it drapes, creates cylinders, right? These are all classically lit cylinders, but it's a sheet, so the cylinder kind of changes. It's maybe small up here, and then it kind of comes out this way, so it's a modified cylinder. This egg is a modified sphere, right? It's a sphere that is drawn, instead of being like that, it comes out this way, okay? So all of these things, all of these wrinkles, they're all pretty much cylindrical. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, this is, I think on my my video, I think I do an example there of how to do the cylinder and the sphere. And I do it on drawing paper. What I have here is just newsprint, so it behaves a little bit differently, but I'm just going to go over it real quickly with you. Again, you've got your overhand, holding overhand your vine charcoal. You're going to do your ghosting method until you start to get something that isn't lopsided. This one has a burr in it. Sometimes you get these and I feel like they have like a hard spot in it. You can always kind of try to take that out. Now if I see that it's a little bit lopsided, I can correct it. I'm starting to see something that looks pretty round. It may not look round, it may, because my drawing board is at an angle, it's gonna start to distort in your view. So keep that in mind. So there, that looks really round to me. So I can start. What I'm gonna do is, for right now I'm just gonna draw it like this, but then I'm gonna also show you how to draw it in starting with a medium ground. So whenever I draw my sphere, I always try to, if I'm looking at an actual sphere, I'll look and see what the light is doing on that. But if I'm just drawing from the classic order of light diagram, which is in your module 2 folder, then I'm just going to go ahead and draw a classic classically lit sphere where the light is coming this way. And my coarse shadow is going to have that crescent moon shape. And then down here, I'm going to have the reflected light. It's going to be a little bit lighter than that coarse shadow. And the highlight is going to be in here somewhere. I'll caution you, try not to, for your highlight, don't draw this, because then you're going to have to get rid of that, because it doesn't, you know, if I just turn this in, this is just a line drawing, it's not value. So if you draw a really harsh circle here, then you're going to probably have a hard time getting rid of that. Alright, so I'm going to try this with just vine charcoal. And I'm going to talk a little bit about blending. This is really an exercise in blending. First of all, you have to know your the classic order diagram to know what's dark. But then you want to try to also practice blending. So right now that's not blended. That's a hard line, right? So what I can do to blend, I can take something and rub it in a circular motion, and it gets rid of that hard line. And this is just vine charcoal, so the whole thing can just disappear really easily. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put some in there. I also have this kind of vine charcoal that has a flat edge. It works much better for this. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of, I like to do reductive drawing. So I'll start off with some value, and then I can subtract some. Okay, so this is the other thing I like to tell everybody. Your eraser is a drawing tool, right? You have to start thinking about an eraser in a new way. Because I'm drawing with my eraser. I draw light with it. So I'm going to draw in this highlight. Keeping it kind of round. Okay, now I drew that in with the eraser. But see, it still has a harsh line. Because what does that represent? Contrast. Contrast between this light and this value. So what I want to do, and what I usually do when I'm drawing in light, I want to make it a little bit bigger than what I intend for it to be, so that I can blend it back. So I'm going to just do a nice big highlight here, but then I'm going to come back in with this blending stump, and I'm going to try to blend away this line. Now you'll run into another discovery that you have with your blending tools. This blending tool has been used, and it's got a lot of charcoal on it already. So I can actually just draw with it if I want, because it's got charcoal on it, right? So I have to remember that this is putting down, not only is it blending something that's existing, but it's also putting down charcoal. So when you're blending your clean areas, you want something clean. And that's where the paper towels come in. And unfortunately, I forgot to get myself a paper towel for this demonstration. But you want to keep in mind when you're blending that you know, is the thing you're blending with, is it dirty or is it clean? If it's clean, it's going to take away more. If it's dirty, it could put down value. So when I'm blending with this, my coarse shadow with this, it's not going to be a problem because it's already got a lot of charcoal on it. But if I'm trying to blend my highlight area, this dirty blender is going to put down maybe more charcoal than I want. So when you're blending, if you have a nice light area that you're going to blend, you might want like a clean paper towel and to kind of blend out that way with it. All right, so we have a start. This is the thing that's hard, I think harder for students to grasp, is that when making a sphere like this, it's a process. It can be like a back and forth process. You put down, and the process involves putting down, I'm switching to my charcoal pencil now because there's only so much I can do with that vine charcoal. And I'm just going to use, this is where we need to have, use the edge of the pencil instead of the point. If you use the point, if I put down something like this with the point, look at how hard that's going to be to blend. It's a really harsh line. So what I want to do is I'm going to hold my pencil like this, and I'm going to lay it down almost flat on the paper, lift it up a little bit until I'm getting just the edge of this pencil, and I can put down tone, and more tone instead of lines. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of block in some tone, some darker tone, and then once I do that, I've got to go back and blend it. I can also vary the pressure that I'm putting on my pencil. So as I get close to this line, I might want to put in some tone with a lighter pressure, and that creates a lighter value. Okay, and when I go in to blend, some of it, what I've put down, is going to disappear. So that's where this becomes a process. And it can be really frustrating at first, so just be patient with yourself. Remember that what you're doing is you're just basically pushing and pulling value with erasers and with drawing implements. Really missing my paper towel right about now. So, and anytime you make a change, you got to get rid of the harsh lines. So it's basically pushing and pulling out lights and darks and then blending them until you get something that starts to look a little bit more realistic. Let's see. And remember, this little sliver back here is going to be for the reflected light. So we can take out some darkness later, but you don't want it to be too light or it won't look right. So just review the video. I feel like what I'm doing right now is kind of repetitive to what I've done on the videos. So go ahead and watch the videos and work on what I would suggest doing is getting yourself set up to draw and turn on those videos. You can draw along with me while I'm drawing. And so the core shadow is just going to be in here somewhere. Remember, the darkest part is going to be right here. And then that's going to kind of come out and feather out. And the reflected light will be in here somewhere. Anytime I make a change like that, I'm going to have to blend that harsh line out. Okay, I'm going to take out a little bit for that reflected light. Usually what happens is I take out too much. That's way too much, right? You can see how that's like, ah! Then you blend back down in there to lower the value and to change that. And then I'm going to kind of try to define the outline without it being a harsh outline. Alright, so it's starting to look more and more cylindrical. And I just keep working on it. I keep going back and forth. I keep revisiting this outline area. And at the end, you know, I'll clean it up so it doesn't look lopsided and all that stuff. So I hope this has been helpful. It looks, this area right here looks like it pokes out a little bit. And it looks worse. So what I can do is just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on this, keeping this looking round, and finish it off. So remember to keep sketchy, and to also go across the room and look at your sphere, especially when you're drawing a big sphere. If you think you have it, put it somewhere across the room, standing up straight, and go across. And then little things like this bump out that I wasn't able to see very well will stand out to you. Like here, now that's flat, right? So, alright, so that's enough with that. I do a full demonstration, I believe, on the video on how to do this. So it's all practice. It's all about getting out those harsh lines. These kneaded erasers are amazing in that they, you can erase in a very kind of, experiment with it, you know. You can erase in a way that's kind of more organic, you know. It's, doesn't always leave a harsh line, just depending on how you shape it and how you use it. Again, this is newsprint, behaves a little bit differently. So, all right. So that's the demonstration on that. Does anybody have any questions for me as I start to wrap up? As we're waiting for questions, I'm going to start the cylinder again with the ghosting method. Gosh, the way my hand is, I'm going to have to draw it down here so it's not crooked. Now remember, if you draw your cylinder, this is the edge of my paper. You want your cylinder to be parallel with the edge of your paper, or it's going to look like it's leaning, right? It's just the way it is. So make sure that when you're drawing the ellipse and everything else that it's parallel. I'm ghosting this. Alright, and then I can do these parallel lines. I'm going to try to keep them parallel to the edge of my paper. And parallel to each other. And then this bottom of the cylinder has got to be curved. It can't be flat like this. Can't be flat. That doesn't translate, right? It doesn't look right. So you have to curve the bottom. And remember the advice that I gave you before, when you're drawing something that is symmetrical, sometimes it helps to have a center line. This center line should also be parallel to these two lines. And then I can use that when I'm drawing this bottom part. If I know that I want this curve down here to be the same on both sides. So I could also say, okay, the curve is going to start right here. That's where the curve is going to end on both sides. And this is the middle, so I can curve like this, curve like that, bring this down, and I can erase. Alright, so I know that the light is coming in from this way. It's going to put my highlight right about here in this area. and it's going to be darker over on this side. And this is going to be a little bit of reflected light right here. And then this. Let me try to get rid of all these lines that I drew. Okay. Alright, so I have my basic light pattern going on here. And I can add and subtract, and then I always want to get rid of any harsh line. And this was all done with Vine charcoal, so I can always come back with my pencil and try to make this look right. Don't want to outline it too hard, so that's another thing that I'll have to work on, is I don't want the outline to flatten it out. It's my core shadow I'm working on with the charcoal pencil, laying it flat. Lightening up on the pressure a little bit, lightening up on the pressure over here. A little darker in this part. I'm going to then have to blend this out, so some of it's going to disappear. Alright. Alright, so it's kind of a push and pull. I feel like Bob Ross right now. Sometimes when I'm doing these videos, I catch myself being like Bob Ross. You guys ever watch Bob Ross? I know that you guys are probably falling asleep right now, because see, we use Bob Ross to get our kids to go to sleep because he's so relaxing. Alright, so it's just a back and forth. So again, I do this on my on the video. So let's see. I see we have some questions now. When are our drawings due? What day exactly? Okay. So this is all the due dates can be found. Okay. So I realize this gets a little bit confusing. On your syllabus, I have the due date that I list on your syllabus is the due date for the module. So if you look in your syllabus, the due date for this module is February 5th. So we're doing these drawings this week. So they are due, what day exactly? February 5th. So what you want to do though is go ahead and get them done as soon as you can. You can post them to the critique page whenever you're ready. And then what happens is everybody should have everything uploaded by February 5th. And then on that next class day, that's usually a good time for you to start engaging in conversation on the critique thread, because that's the due date. Everybody's supposed to have it done by February 5th. So that due date is here in your syllabus. Also, what I do when modules are longer, like the still life module is a long module. So what I do is I divide it into drawings. We'll start one still life number 1. And still life number 1 technically is due on February 21st. But if you look on your syllabus, there's a few other due dates for them. Still life setup. I want you to have your still life setup done, which means in your house I want you to have your objects arranged. I want you to have a photograph of it posted, and that's the first step in getting to that final due date is creating your setup. So that's the first thing that I want you to do in that still life number 1. And then we have an in-process critique for that a week later. So the way I usually work this still life is we start off the module, you get your still life setup done, take a picture of it. A week later, you post a picture of where you are in process of creating that drawing, and then a week after that, the final drawing has to be posted. So sometimes, I give you these other due dates, and that's really to help keep you on track, to keep you on schedule, instead of just giving you one due date. So for this module, this value module, I just want you to do it this week. We're working on it this week, and February 5th is the last day for posting. And then we'll engage in critique conversation after that as we begin the next module. So whenever you're looking for exact due dates, 2 places for you to look: the syllabus, and also you can look at my announcements page. The announcements page, I'll give you more guidance as to if something needs to be, if I need to give you guidance on how to keep the pace, I'll do that. If it's not in the still life, if it's not in your syllabus, it will be in the announcements. Like, I'll say you should really have this done in the middle of the week so you can finish X, Y, and Z by the end of the week. What pencil do you use over the Vine charcoal? 2B? I'm not sure. Okay, if I'm heavy-handed, but all my drawings came out really dark. Okay, so to address that question, I always start off with the Vine charcoal. And then as far as my charcoal pencils go, this is a 6B that I was using. And the way it works in hardness is this. Your 2B charcoal pencil is a lot harder of charcoal, and so it's lighter. The 4B is darker than the 2B. The 6B is darker than the 4B. So what you have to watch out for with that heavy-handedness is the amount of pressure you're using. So this is a 6B. If I very lightly put it on my page and do this, I can get a very light tone. I should be able to do an entire drawing with just a 6B pencil, just by varying the pressure and by using my pushing and pulling with my eraser. But also, you really need to start to pay attention to how hard you're pressing down with your pencil when you're working. Okay, so that's me with a light pressure with a 6B. But the 6B can be this dark, right? So it's all about pressure. So just practice really being, if you're heavy-handed, I tend to be heavy-handed myself. So practice putting down light tones like this. Take your pencil, sharpen it with a straight razor blade or somehow to expose more of the charcoal, and use the edge of the charcoal and practice putting down tone, just like this. I'm not pressing very hard, but I'm going fairly quickly. And I'm getting a really nice, even tone. So practice this. And the way I'm doing it is I'm holding my pencil, not holding my pencil like this. This is how we're used to writing. This is for penmanship, okay? Sometimes with drawing, you want to hold your pencil another way. I hold it this way when I'm going fast so I can use my wrist motion. So even this is kind of sideways. I'm using wrist motion in a really light touch with some wrist motion. And what that does is it's giving me a tone instead of giving me lines. Okay, and it's just up to you what works for you. But I had to actually practice this. And you practice sharpening your pencil so you get a good result. But you want to practice being able to get tone instead of this line. You know, if I were drawing that way, I could still get tone. But you have to just avoid getting, crazy lines in your drawing. Yes, I'm glad some of you know about Bob Ross, the happy little tree, happy little shadow, happy little everything. Okay, so as I said before, the Module 2, it was my bad. It was supposed to be up yesterday on the announcements, and I forgot to click a little box. So I realized that today. It's up there now, the announcements. If I ever forget to put up an announcement, please let me know. But also know that if I don't have, let's say it's Monday morning, and we're starting a new module, and I don't have the module directions up, you can always go to your module folder. The only thing I'm doing with the announcements is I'm just putting hyperlinks to your folder or to YouTube. Somebody else asked me the question, how do we know which videos go with what from the YouTube channel? The way you do that, if you go, sometimes I have playlists. I do have playlists in the YouTube channel, but the way to know what order to watch them in is to look at your announcements and also to look at the module folder. The module folder should have the links to the YouTube videos in it. All the videos that relate to that module. And so if I ever forget, you can just go to your module folder and dig in, because everything in there is relevant to that particular module. So, and again, remember, just maybe print out your syllabus. Syllabus is a guide. Sometimes I change it, like something happens, like my daughter had to be home this week, so that put me behind. So now I'm saying, if you're late getting things turned in for Module 1, it's partially my fault. So, get it in as soon as you can, but I'm not going to count off for it. Also, sometimes, something may happen that, I guess snow days don't apply anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. But, syllabus, sometimes I have to change the dates, and I always let you know if I do. But print it out. Print out the calendar portion. You don't have to print out the whole syllabus if you don't want. But that calendar portion where it divides the modules and it lists the important dates, you might want to do that. Also, I'd like to stress, if you have not done, on the iCollege page, if you have not done the introducing yourself to me, please do that. Please go ahead and comment on Module 1. I'm getting there. I'm going to do that after I think there's a couple people I missed. I'm going to go back and make comments on the critique page. This is how I know you're participating in the class. If you've introduced yourself to me, if you sign in on my live streams, and if you're participating in the critique. Those are the things I have to go on to know how much you're participating in the class. And obviously if you turn in your work. So if there's anybody out there that's listening to this who hasn't done any of that, please make sure you that you go ahead and do those things. Turn in your work is the number one thing. Number two thing is comment on critique page. Number three is make sure you do that little introduction thing. Inaya, you have a question. You say you just looked at the announcement page and the week 2 announcement is not showing. Oh, really? Okay, week 2. Let me look at that. That might have been the one that I didn't post because my daughter was home, and that was the one that talked about that 4-object drawing. So let me check on that, Anaya, and the module 2 announcement. Oh, that's funny. I just checked it and I thought it was there. Okay, so I tell you what. Let's try this on the live stream. I'm going to see if I can fix it because I thought I fixed it earlier. Hold on a sec. I'm just going to take a minute and look at it. When I go to announcements, I see week 1, I see welcome, I see week 2, week 3 value. I see it all. Let me go to the class list. Sometimes I have to impersonate a student to see what you guys see. So maybe it's not giving me that option. Huh. All right. Student demo. Here we go. Let me look at it. Okay, it's there. It's there, Anaya. You just have to scroll down. It goes week 1, then there's the welcome message. It's a little bit out of order. Then it goes down, there's a week 2, then there's a week 3. So you gotta scroll down. The announcements just is kind of a long list. Okay, Anaya, can you look and tell me if you can see it? Because I can see it. Can everybody else see? Under the announcements, if you scroll all the way down, week 3 value. Section 24. Anaya, if you can't see it still, are you in section 24? I can see the module 2. It's on the right hand side of the page on the module 2 value. Yeah, you know what, Danielle? It should go in order, and I think what's happening is some of my announcements still have the original announcement date on them, like which from last semester, which I think is messing up the order. So I'll try to fix that as well. It should go in order. So I'll try to go back and fix that. But it is there. All right, thank you guys for communicating with me again. I'm still in a learning curve for this online stuff, and what I've been doing each semester is just trying to make improvements, and your feedback really helps me to do that. All right, so what I want you to do for the rest of the day is get to work on watching those videos, and get to work on watching the videos and creating these drawings. Don't hesitate to give me feedback on things like these weird dates and orders and things. I'll get it all straightened out, I promise you. That last semester was my first time doing this really full-scale online drawing, and I didn't realize that those dates would transfer over. So I can fix that very easily, and I'll do that now. So again, just in parting, if you haven't commented on Module 1 critique, please do so now. Start Module 2. Module 2 is really just something we're doing this week. It's due February 5th. It's just really about practice. It's about understanding the basic shapes, the cylinder, the sphere, and the cube. When we meet Thursday, I'll go over the cube. This is an example of something something that I think will help you stay on track. Try to post something by Thursday. If not, that's okay. Everybody's got a different schedule. That's why online classes work so well. You may not be able to work during the day when other people can work. But if you happen to have something done and you want some feedback on it, you can go ahead and post it. Start a critique thread. You can post it, get some in-process critique. You can remove it if you don't like it. You can then come back on a different day, edit your thread, put in a new drawing. This is the way we can substitute for being in the same room together. Usually when we're in the same room, I just go around. I make the rounds around the classroom. I look over your shoulder when you're drawing, which is actually, I'm sure, very irritating. So be glad I'm not doing that all the time. But you can just get that feedback from your peers, get that feedback from me by going ahead and posting on the critique page. And I think you guys should visit that critique page. Just pop in on a daily basis and check it out, see what's new. Try to keep it lively, because to me that's what keeps this class interesting. Because we're apart from each other, that's what brings us together. Any last questions? I know that this can be really boring, like I said, with the other, the sighting and measuring. This part, the first two modules are very technical. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to really gear up and prepare you for that third module, which is still life. Really trying to get you prepared for that. So make sure you're putting in the time. This is like you're putting in the foundation right now. These first two modules are your absolute foundation for the rest of the class. So if you haven't put in the time, please put in the time. I encourage you to work in your sketchbook, practice everything. Practice these spheres and cylinders, and whenever you're looking at a video from me, have something out so you can draw along with me if you want. Make it work for you. The 2-week announcement from fall of 2020, basically it's the same announcement. I just need to change the date, right? Because my courses are basically the same every semester. In Module 2, we do the same things at the same time. So I'll change the date and get it so that it is posting correctly for us, and that should fix the order. My daughter and I, we're doing fine. We have, I know a lot of people have bubbles. Have you guys heard of bubbles for this pandemic? We have a group of families that we interact with, and one of those families had just a scare. Nothing ended up happening, but somebody was exposed to someone who ended up having COVID, but they weren't exposed very much, and so nobody ended up getting it. So that's great. My daughter is back schooling with them, and we're doing great. So I would, again, stress for you guys to wear your masks wherever you go. It's getting more and more contagious, so we have to be extra, extra careful. All right, everybody. Let's get to work. Feel free to email me if you have any further questions, and I'm going to try to go and fix those announcements right now, and then I'm going to go to the critique page and look and see what's going on there. All right, everybody, have a great day, and we'll do this live stream again on Thursday. Okay? See you then.